7 months have passed since that night on Brookfield Lane, and I still can't drive past that neighborhood without feeling my chest tighten. I'm Officer Rachel Monroe, been with the Lakeside Police Department for about 8 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything our quiet town could throw at me. Domestic calls were routine for me. I'd handled dozens, maybe hundreds. Most were verbal disputes that needed cooling down. Some required arrests, but they all followed a predictable pattern. That Wednesday night, in early March, started like any other swing shift. I was parked near the Maplewood Shopping Center, finishing paperwork from a minor theft report when dispatch crackled through about a disturbance at 4279 Brookfield Lane. The neighbors, an elderly couple named the Morizes, had called about violent arguing and what sounded like furniture being thrown around next door. The drive to Brookfield Lane took maybe 6 minutes, and I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked under the streetlights. It was one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions built in the late 90s, all two-story colonials with attached garages and perfectly manicured lawns. Number 4279 stood out immediately, though. Every light in the house was blazing, even the porch lights and what looked like the basement windows. But there was no movement visible through any of the windows, no shadows passing by, nothing. The silence hit me as soon as I stepped out of my patrol car. After a reported violent argument, you expect to hear something, continued shouting, crying, maybe a TV turned up to cover the awkwardness. But this house was dead quiet, and all those lights burning made it feel like the place was holding its breath, waiting for something. I radioed my position to dispatch and approached the front door, noting the pristine welcome mat that read, "Bless this home," in cursive letters. The door was slightly ajar, maybe 3 inches open, and through the gap, I could see into the foyer. A ceramic vase lay shattered across the hardwood floor, dirt and wilted daisies scattered among the pieces. I announced myself loudly. "Police, is anyone home? I'm coming to check on your welfare." Then I pushed the door open wider with my shoulder. The smell hit me immediately, copper and bleach mixing together in a way that made my sinuses burn. In my 8 years on the force, I'd learned that smell meant someone had tried to clean up blood. And recently, the living room to my right looked like a tornado had passed through. The coffee table was flipped, its glass top spiderwebbed with cracks, and the beige couch had been shoved hard against the wall, leaving deep scratches across the floor. Dark red droplets led from the living room toward the kitchen, getting thicker as I followed them. In the kitchen, I found a pool of blood near the island counter, maybe 8 inches across. Still tacky, but not fresh. Probably 2 or 3 hours old based on the consistency. Cabinet doors hung open, dishes scattered across the counters like someone had been searching frantically for something. But what really made me draw my weapon was the basement door. It had been padlocked from the outside with a heavy-duty master lock, the kind you'd use on a storage unit. But someone had taken a hammer to it. The tool was still lying on the floor, and the lock hung twisted and broken from the hasp. Fresh scratches covered the door frame around the lock, deep gouges that revealed raw wood underneath. Whoever had been trying to get through that door had been desperate. I called for backup before descending those stairs, told dispatch I had signs of violence and needed another unit immediately. The basement stairs creaked under my weight, and that chemical bleach smell grew stronger with each step. What I found at the bottom made me stop breathing for a moment. The basement had been converted into some kind of living space, but not the cozy rec room kind you'd expect in suburbia. A stained mattress sat in the corner on the concrete floor, still bearing the indent of a body. Next to it, a bucket that I didn't want to examine too closely, and a pile of women's clothing folded neatly on a plastic chair. But the worst part was the wall. Someone had drilled industrial-grade eye bolts into the concrete, 4 of them at different heights with heavy chains still attached. The chains had blood on the cuffs, along with what looked like pieces of skin where someone had struggled against them for a long time. On a workbench against the far wall, I found what made this whole scene click into place. There were 3 driver's licenses, All different women, all from different states: Indiana, Wisconsin, and Missouri. Next to them sat a notebook filled with schedules, times, and observations written in neat handwriting. Subject 3 refuses meals days 1 to 3. Subject 2 attempted communication with Subject 3, separated immediately. New acquisition plan for next week. Blonde, early 20s, spotted at a campus library. My radio crackled with backup arriving, but I was already photographing everything with my phone, knowing how crucial every detail would be. The most recent entry was from that morning. Subject 3 broke during night. Unusual strength display. May need to terminate ahead of schedule. Below that, in different handwriting, shaky and barely legible, someone had written, "He's upstairs. Get out. Get out now." The floorboards above me creaked, and every muscle in my body went rigid. I hadn't cleared the second floor. In my rush to follow the blood trail and investigate the basement, I'd violated basic protocol. I could hear footsteps now, slow and deliberate, moving from directly above toward the stairs. My backup was outside, probably just entering the house, but they didn't know someone was still here. I key my radio as quietly as possible. Suspect still in house. Second floor. Approach with extreme caution. The footsteps stopped, then came running, heavy boots pounding across the floor above, heading toward the back of the house. I bolted up the basement stairs, taking them 2 at a time, just as I heard glass shatter somewhere upstairs. By the time I reached the second floor with 2 other officers behind me, we found a bedroom window completely smashed out, curtains billowing in the night air. The bedroom told another part of the story. Men's clothes filled the closet, all organized by color. The dresser held a collection of watches, rings, and wallets, trophies I realized for victims' boyfriends or husbands. On the nightstand sat a police scanner, still turned on, and a laptop that was open to a University of Wisconsin student directory. But the detail that haunts me most was the wall behind the bed. He'd covered it with printed photos from social media. Dozens of young women at coffee shops, libraries, grocery stores, all taken from a distance, all unaware they were being photographed. Each photo had notes written in red marker. Too public. Lies with roommates. Perfect isolated jogging route. Parents visit monthly. Some photos had large X's drawn through them. Checking later, we found those women matched missing persons reports from surrounding counties. The one marked Subject 4. Next week showed a young brunette studying at a cafe. Her car keys visible on the table with a distinctive pom-pom keychain. We set up a perimeter immediately. K9 units tracking from the broken window. But the bastard had planned even his escape route. He'd left a rope ladder attached to the window frame, leading down to a shed roof, and then to a fence that backed up to a wooded area behind the subdivision. The dogs lost his scent at a creek about a quarter-mile in, where we found tire tracks from what looked like an ATV he'd stashed there. Inside the shed, we discovered he'd been preparing for this possibility. Bags of clothes, cash, hair dye, and 3 sets of fake IDs with his photo, but different names. Ryan Hale, Derek Collier, and Matthew Cross. We had no idea which, if any, was real. What we did know was that he'd been operating for at least 18 months based on the earliest dated photos, and the 3 women whose IDs we found were just his most recent victims. The forensics team worked through the night, and by morning we identified the blood in the kitchen as belonging to Caroline Myers, the woman from Indiana whose license we'd found. The other 2 were Hannah Wolf from Wisconsin and Emily Dorn from Missouri. Here's what we pieced together. Caroline, based on the blood volume and the desperate message, had somehow gotten free while he was out. She'd broken the basement door lock from the inside. We found her blood on the hammer handle and tried to help the others escape. But he came home before they could all get out. The neighbors heard the struggle. Furniture crashing as Caroline fought back with a desperation that gave her that unusual strength. He noted she wounded him too. We found his blood mixed with hers on a kitchen knife left in the sink. The other two women had gotten out during the chaos, running barefoot through backyards until they reached a house 6 blocks away, where they pounded on doors until someone let them in and called 911. Caroline never made it out. We found her body 2 days later, buried under fresh concrete in the garage of another house he'd been renting under one of his fake names 3 towns over. The coroner said she'd fought until the very end. Defensive wounds covering her arms, his DNA under her fingernails. She'd saved 2 lives with her courage, creating enough chaos for Hannah and Emily to escape while she held them off. The house on Brookfield Lane turned out to be just one of 3 properties he was using. The second was that garage, and the third was a cabin up near the Pine Ridge State Forest, where he'd been taking victims initially before moving them to the suburban basement. Each location showed the same meticulous planning, the same horrifying attention to detail. We found journals dating back 3 years documenting his research and methods, how he'd studied police response times, neighborhood patterns, even attended community watch meetings to blend in. Hannah and Emily spent weeks in the hospital recovering physically and mentally. Their testimony finally gave us a real profile of him. Mid-30s, around 6 feet tall, brown hair, neat appearance, slight southern accent he tried to hide. He knew law enforcement procedures, possibly former military or police based on his methods. The FBI took over after we found evidence he'd operated in at least 4 other states. They still send updates occasionally, sightings that never pan out. Sometimes I drive past that house on Brookfield Lane. It's been sold now, renovated completely. A young family lives there with no idea what happened in their basement. But I know. Hannah and Emily know. And somewhere out there, he knows too. Probably watching another coffee shop, taking more photos, making more lists. That's what keeps me up at night. Not what I found in that house, but knowing he's still out there, planning to do it all over again.